With Terravion, you can use our layered imagery to identify irrigation failures early enough to correct the problem before it negatively affects your yield. In this image, we see a suspicious ring in the middle of the field here. As we click through some of the other layers, the irregularity becomes more noticeable. This circle likely indicates that there is an inconsistency along the pivot sprinkler, and in this case, the problem is that the sprinkler settings are off, the water is being forced too hard to the end of the pivot and bypassing the center emitters, leaving them dry. You can see that here. The problem is very clear and obvious in the most recent images, but by this point it's far too late to do anything about it. Let's take a look at earlier images of this field and see how you can use thermal imagery to identify this issue early enough to make an effective correction. This image was taken on July 7th. The natural color image looks perfectly healthy, but if we look at the thermal layer, we can start to see a suspicious pattern emerging here. As we look at the color layer for the following weeks for this field, we can see the problem remains undetectable until about 3 weeks later, on July 26th, when we can faintly see the pattern emerging here. By this point, it is likely too late to make an effective correction. The thermal layer will spot an irrigation irregularity weeks before it can be seen in the natural color layer. Learn to identify these irregularities early enough to make corrections and limit loss of yield. This example of irrigation failure was fairly easy to spot. Let's look at a more likely scenario. Here is an image of a cornfield taken later in the season where it's clear that there is a sprinkler failure here. In this case, the irregularity is much more obvious with the natural color layer and the infrared layer than it is with the thermal layer. The reason for this is that the natural color layer, figure layer, and infrared layer have a much higher resolution than the thermal layer. Here is another case where NDVI imagery can be useful in identifying irrigation issues. This image illustrates what you may see in the case of a furrow irrigation blockage. You can see here there is an area of low vigor, which likely indicates this particular area is not receiving enough water. This could possibly mean that the furrows are not flowing efficiently.
Areas of the field where irrigation water is not being properly applied, you can visibly see very quickly.
It's important that you utilize all the tools that Terravion offers in addition to your own knowledge of your field in order to arrive at the most accurate conclusion about what is really happening in your field. We also recommend that you utilize Terravion's use case calculator found at terravion.com to help determine exactly how much profit you can save by correcting problems you've identified using Terravion imagery. Thank you for watching this video, and please visit terravion.com for more videos like this.